All right, welcome back to another episode of Phoenix Edge. This is an RPG and gaming news podcast. My name is Hat.
And I'm Eric.
And we are missing Stan this week. Unfortunately, Stan had to take this night off, but he'll be back on next week's episode. But we do have some exciting topics to talk about. First off, we're going to go through all the different games that we talked about in 2 episodes ago, where we did the RPGs coming out in the first 6 months of 2021. We're going to quickly let you guys know some of the release date changes, and then we're going to zone in on Mass Effect Legendary Edition, because basically after like 2 days of us doing that episode, they dropped all this information. They dropped the trailer. They had like little puff pieces with all the media outlets, and we basically learned almost everything that we'd want to know just about. So we're going to really dive in on the material that we learned over the past couple weeks and talk about Mass Effect Legendary Edition. Then we're going to move into Eric's favorite segment of the podcast, probably ever, Final Fantasy XIV. There was a new.
We're all going to turn off the podcast.
Well, there's time codes in the description, but if you don't care about Mass Effect, you can move over to Final Fantasy XIV, vice versa. But Final Fantasy XIV, there's a new expansion called Endwalker, and we're excited to talk about it. Eric's a big Final Fantasy XIV fan, so he's going to be doing a lot of the heavy lifting with the details, but I'll give some thoughts on what I thought of the trailer and that type of thing that I saw. So should be a pretty fun discussion. So let's jump into the topics here. So like I said before, there were some updates after we had our original episode where we talked about the 2021 RPGs coming in the first 6 months. And so to get some of the quick news out of the way, we had an update to Chris Tales. So there was a new confirmed release date for July 2021. I think that we were speculating that it might be out in March, just because it was originally supposed to come out in November, but
Slightly off.
Yeah, we're off by like 4 months, but whatever. But Chris Tales is a very cool game. We were really excited to play it, but we've also talked about it on like 3 or 4 different podcasts. So until we get something maybe more substantial, we're gonna pause on that and just let you know that it's coming out in July 2021. And then just as a reminder, other games we covered in the previous episode, Bravely Default 2 is coming out on February 26th, end of this month. I'm picking it up.
Day one for me.
Yep, and I believe Stan said he's picking it up as well. So look forward to us giving our impressions. Tales of Arise, still no release date. Really looking forward to that game, but hopefully we can learn some more information soon. Monster Hunter Rise, March 26th. Then we have Persona 5 Strikers, February 23rd. I know we said we were going to hold off on that game just because we enjoyed Persona 5, but it was a long game and we have other stuff to play. Nier Replicant, that got a new trailer, which looked really cool, but we didn't really learn a lot of new information on that, but that's coming out April 23rd. Yeast 9, that's out now. Did you ever pick that up, Eric?
I did.
Are you still working your way? Oh, okay. So you picked it up and played it?
It's different from Yeast 8 in terms of how you explore and traverse through exploring like dungeons and stuff. Because like in the 8th game, you're exploring like an island and you're uncovering more over time the more people you find. And in this one, it's like you're in one big city, but you enter specific dungeons within the city. That's more linear. And I've only played Yeast 8 and 9. So I don't know if 9 is like a return to form or like some new way. Maybe someone in the comments can give better detail. But regardless, it's still a great game. It's simple to pick up. It has a nice arcadey like action to it. The story's interesting. The characters are kind of typical in the way, but not in the but still executed pretty well enough.
Right.
That you enjoy it. I think anyone looking for a good comfy action anime game will probably get something good out of this.
Yeah, I heard from somewhere, I think it was on another podcast. I wish I could remember so I could shout them out. But basically that Yeast 9 is supposed to be a little bit different. They're trying some new things out, but it seems like it's been well received. So that's pretty cool. So I still have to get into the series. So maybe Yeast 9 will be the entry point. Somebody in the comments let us know if Yeast 9 is the best point to enter.
I'll say this: if you are a fan of Yeast 8 and only played 8, 9 is different in a lot of ways, but it's still really good, and you should still pick it up and try it.
Very cool. Very cool. So that
Old
game,
Yeast fans, I can't say.
yeah. So that came out on February 2nd. So definitely go pick that up if that interests you. And then Shin Megami Tensei 5, we still have no release date. That might as well be the subtitle for that game. No
Just to give
release
you
date.
guys an update, the hairstyle still looks really stupid.
No change on that
Come at
front.
me.
It still looks dumb. So, anyways, so that's kind of the updates with that. And then for Mass Effect Legendary Edition, which is the big thing that we're going to be talking about here in depth, we got a release date for May 14th, 2021. There was some rumors going on about the game supposed to come out from in late March or early April. And these were rumors that were actually being reported from big places like GameSpot. So it seemed like it was pretty credible, but it's possible that those leaks were still accurate, but things have changed for whatever reason. But it's coming out May 14th, 2021 now at this point. And we learned a lot of information about it. So we're going to go through it, kind of stop after each segment, kind of talk about the things we learned. But we're going to go through some of the most notable changes or improvements with the Mass Effect Legendary Edition. First being, obviously, with it being a remaster, the visuals. It's a higher resolution, so it has all three games in this Legendary Edition, and they're all upscaled to 4K HDR. So it's going to look a lot better because the original, at least number one, only went up to 720p. So that's a pretty substantial upgrade. The textures themselves have been upgraded. BioWare used an AI upres program to improve the textures. In some instances of 4x, and some textures were improved by as much as 16 times compared to the originals, which is a pretty big improvement. And this was all done with an AI upres program. And there was also some improved lighting and smoke effects the originals didn't have. So it looks really good. But certain parts of the game did have some hand touches by artists to kind of fix things that looked out of place after the AI went through and did its business. And the lighting and smoke effects were limited to Unreal Engine 3's capabilities. So keep that in mind if you're expecting ray tracing or anything like that. It's limited to Unreal Engine 3. They were talking about Unreal Engine 4, but the director of this remaster was just very candid and said, we talked about it and it was just going to take way too much time. So the other thing to bring up in the visuals department before we kind of break down and talk about this is the unified character models are now across all three games. Big ones being female Shepard's model was finalized in Mass Effect 3, so that model is going to be used for all three games. Before it was kind of a different take each time, and it was a little weird. I personally played male Shepard, but I know female Shepard fans are really excited to have the same character model through all three games. And then there's been various other enhancements added in Mass Effect 3 that are being backported to Mass Effect 1 and 2, and a lot of different character upgrades at a smaller level, some of them larger, but just all around enhancements to the character models that are going to be unified across all the games. So a lot of really cool stuff here in the visuals department. We still got to get to the gameplay and some other stuff, but let's stop here first and just kind of talk about this. What'd you think about the visual upgrade, Eric, from the trailer that you saw?
I'm glad they took the effort to do this. I was kind of worried that they were just going to upscale Mass Effect 1 and that would just be it. But they did go a little above and beyond with it, I think. The graphics definitely look a lot better. I mean, I forgot that this game is like, what, it came out in 2007?
Yeah, it's old.
I think.
Mass Effect 1,
Yeah,
yeah.
came out 13, 14 years ago. And man, does it show. I used to think that was so realistic when I first saw that game back then. But now I look at it, I'm like, oh, that one didn't age as well as 2 and 3. 2 and 3 still look really good.
Yeah.
And they didn't really need it to touch up much on those. They found a way to, you know, um, have more life to them in terms of graphically. So I'm really glad they did this, and I'm glad they went out of their way to get the character customization to flow with all three games. So you feel like there's a consistent standard,
Yeah, yeah.
and I do understand why they had to go back and like kind of change some things because despite the AI re, uh,
Upscale,
upscale,
texturizing. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, because they probably did that to make the characters look more like they do in 2 and 3. So, like I said, everything just goes with the flow. It's not too candid when you go through the game. So, I am glad they did that. I also understand that it was probably a lot of time and resources needed to go to Unreal 4, which I don't think is a big deal as long as the game still plays well and it's upscaled, the frame rate is better. Like, do we
Yeah.
really care that it needs to be on Unreal 4?
Yeah. I agree. I mean, it's a lot better than what we had before. And they were still selling these games for like $30 a piece on Steam. So the fact that it looks better than that and you're getting it, we don't know. That's one thing we don't have yet is the price, but I'm assuming it's going to be $60. That's just a phenomenal deal. And the game does look a lot better. So I think that, if it had looked like, well, obviously if it had looked worse, that would have been a terrible deal. But if it had looked only marginally better, I think that maybe you could kind of complain a little bit like, really, you can't get it up to Unreal 4. But the difference is very obvious. If you look at the trailer, go back and look at some of the before and after, you can really see how much of a impact some of this upscaling and retexturing and kind of hand touches have done to the visuals. This AI texturing in particular, I'm really happy to see big games are using that because this has been something we've kind of seen at a more amateur level, right? With the Maguri mod, for example, for Final Fantasy IX, where they used AI upscaling and texturing to kind of make the backgrounds of the game look the same resolution as the updated character models. And we were over the moon about that. And we were talking about how we wanted to see bigger companies use that to their advantage. And I mean, in this case, it probably saved them a lot of money to do that, but I'm really happy that somebody did it in a big series like Mass Effect, and it saved them probably a bunch of money too. So hopefully that gets other companies' attention.
Yeah, and absolutely. I mean, I really don't have much complaints. I mean, it looks really good for a game that doesn't look so great anymore. It really looks like they put the effort to make it at least compared to Mass Effect 2 uh, and 3 in terms of graphical quality.
Yeah.
So I got to give them props for that. I think that was one of the biggest things I said last time, that like the way to make the HD remaster completely worth it is you had to do a lot of legwork on Mass Effect 1 itself. Because I thought 2 and 3 could get away with just upscale and a frame rate increase, and
Right.
those
Right.
games would be fine. At least I think so.
Mm-hmm.
But Mass Effect 1 was the game that like just really needed that push and effort put into it. And I think I bet a lot of their resources went into fixing Mass Effect 1. And I think that was a good call.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's going to be the entry point for a lot of people when they pick this up for the first time, or people that want to replay it. I mean, there's going to be a lot of people that only play Mass Effect 1 and the remaster when they pick it up, and then they'll drop it and maybe they'll pick it up later. So that makes a lot of sense that they would put more effort into the first game, especially like you said, because it needed the most work. I will say there's one thing that I saw in the trailer that felt a little bit off to me, and then I realized what they were doing. It's this background blur effect. I hate when games do that, and I cannot wait to buy the game and turn it off. But I didn't I didn't recognize what they were doing, but there was something else slightly off to me until I saw GameSpot's before and after. And what they did was they literally went through and recorded footage of the game on PC and then all the scenes in the trailer, and then they just did like before and afters from a lot of the big scenes, and you can look at that video and just obviously the characters in the foreground look a lot better, but if you look in the background, there's scenes where you can see text in the background of the PC version, and then after the remaster comes through, they blurred the background so the text is more blurry, but the character models more detailed. And they just do that, like Witcher 3 did that on the Switch too. And they just do that to try to make, like, it look even more, polished, to try to like blur the background a little bit. But I don't like that, so I'm gonna turn that off. But that's the only thing that I saw that I
Better
didn't
make
like.
sure you get the PC version then, because who knows if you can turn that off on the PS4 or
Yeah,
Xbox version.
yeah, that's the thing. And I'm probably just gonna end up getting it on PC anyways, even though I want a physical version of it just to have, on my shelf. But I'm probably gonna get the PC version because
I'll
even if
probably
I
get the PC version too.
yeah, even if I got the PlayStation version, it's gonna have like buttloads of updates and stuff for me to download. So it's not even really like I'm getting the full experience, on day one on my disc. So that's probably what I'm going to go. But there was one important thing to talk about with the visuals that you had brought up before the podcast that we should probably, address. Probably the biggest thing to talk about with the visuals. Um, that's Miranda's ass. There's a bit of a controversy around it, but I'm being a little facetious here, guys. But basically, there's been some controversy a little bit, not a whole lot, but they've gone through, and some of the scenes where the camera was like right in front of a character's butt or other parts of their body for clearly sexual purposes, fan service, they've gone through and redid the camera angles so that it was more cinematic,
They basically went.
which makes more sense from a story perspective, but it's got some people upset that it's
Yeah,
censorship and everything like that.
I understand the fan service, and if anything, it was probably not really necessary to do it because the people who you're trying to prevent hearing this controversy from are still going to do it. The character is still there. Her model hasn't changed. Um, I mean, she I think she actually caused controversy in their first appearance back then. Well, don't quote me on that, but she's probably going to again. I mean, someone's going to put up some article that's complaining about her model. I don't think there's any way to prevent it. Personally, I think they should have just been like, screw it, just keep it the way it is. They're going to complain anyways. But I mean, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter at the end of the day if where the cameras panned at. So
I'm I'm sure modders will fix it.
you
Maybe.
know, probably.
Oh boy.
I
Well,
want to know what the title of that mod will be. Something.
yeah.
But there's a little controversy about it already, but I think it's kind of been dropped already because I don't think it's that big of a deal today. They're not getting rid of like any particular scenes with her.
Right.
They're not changing the model or anything, or they're not like fixing
Changing.
the butt to not be so freaking tight on that suit. So so it is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you're upset about this, just recognize that you're going to be able to look at it in 4K now on your own, so you'll be okay. Anyways, so that's some cool stuff with the visuals. Even if we are getting different camera angles, but let's move on to the gameplay. Some exciting stuff here. We got 60 frames per second on all the consoles, and then unlocked frame rate on PC. So however powerful your PC is can do whatever frame rate you want. Load times. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying, very good.
Yep, I'm happy about that. Load times, I think it's implied, but they just specified, have been massively improved. And that is a huge deal for Mass Effect 1 in particular, I think, because the load times in that game were terrible. And that includes when you're running around larger maps and it's like stuttering, like that whole thing has gone away too. So this is going to be a lot better to play. And now there's a unified control scheme across all three games. So they have an improved aim assist, dedicated melee button, and improved HUD all around. And there's some other changes as well. They've improved the AI for allies and enemies. In particular, it was noted that enemies will now duck and cover instead of running directly at you in Mass Effect 1. So it could be a little more difficult.
Is your AI not as stupid in Mass Effect 1 also?
Is your AI?
No. Do you remember the AIs in that game?
Yeah, it was bad. So apparently they're improving it.
Like a lot of times I remember they just go Leroy Jenkins out there and just get
Oh,
them.
you mean your own out? Yeah. Okay, I got you. Yeah. Yeah, apparently that's been improved. Now what improved means outside of enemies will now duck and cover instead of running directly at you, I don't know, but we don't know what percentage. It could be a 5% improvement. But at least it's not less than, right? So, pretty cool. Gameplay changes also to Mass Effect 1 in particular, which, like we said, they kind of highlighted that one out, is they removed the class restrictions on weapons. So this is more similar to Mass Effect 2, where you don't have to have a particular class to use different weapons. And then inventory management is being tweaked, but they didn't really specify what that means other than they're working on it. They thought about replacing it with like later games, and they just didn't want to, that was too much work, but they're going to try to optimize it and make it a little bit better. And we'll learn more as time goes on. And they've done other small changes that were not too difficult, but easy to do, that made it more consistent with Mass Effect 2 and Mass Effect 3, although it is still an RPG, so you don't have to worry about that. And what's your take on some of these gameplay upgrades? We talked a little bit about it, but
Good. uh, I don't really remember the inventory and weapons systems and Mass
yeah,
Effect, especially. 2 and 3, I remember a little bit. I mean, I guess that's good. I guess there isn't too much you have to do as long as you take away the class restriction and maybe increase the inventory size. I think you should be okay on Mass Effect 1 for the most part. I
yeah,
always thought you didn't need that many weapons around on you
hmm
at all times. I mean, you just need the basic forward to switch to between, and you should be good. So I'm mostly okay on that. Like I said, I'm glad it's 60 frames per second across the board with everyone, even the lesser console versions.
I think it specifies 60 frames per second on PS4 Pro. I didn't see what it would be on PS4 standard.
Gotcha.
So,
I think they slightly mentioned PS5 and Series X.
mhm,
I don't think they're making a PS5 and Series X version,
I don't think so. No.
big version, but I think they'll have, but there will still be some perks to playing on those. So I think maybe the 60 frames per second from the Pro versions and probably faster loading times, I guess, would be
On the
what.
PS5. Yeah.
So I don't think I'd probably wait around for a PS5 version or anything. I'd probably just get that one and just play it on that. If for somehow you find the PS5 to begin with.
Yeah. Yeah. That is a big problem right now. I think that some of these gameplay upgrades, they seem like just, I don't want to make this sound like it's a negative, but they make it sound like they pick specific things that were easier for them to address, that would make, like, they got the most bang for their buck with what they were trying to change, that would give players the most satisfaction without trying to go on some wild goose chase trying to rebuild the entirety of Mass Effect 1, and and have that become like its own basically remake, right? Because it's a very easy, like, once you start getting in there and tinkering with stuff, for it to get out of control. And it seems like, okay, they said we can remove the class restriction. That's probably a change of a variable somewhere. Okay, we're going to try to optimize inventory management, but we're not going to try to like reinvent the wheel. Okay, we're going to unify the control scheme across the games. We're going to improve AI. I mean, these are load times, frame FPS. I mean, these are very small changes, but they all have, I think, cumulative big impact on the game, you know?
I do agree with you that like you shouldn't change the game but so much, especially if it's a HD remaster,
Right.
because how much can you change until the game starts losing its identity of what people
Right.
remember about it? I understand some things should get modernized, like the class, like removing class restriction is definitely a good thing, and I don't think it ruins uh, the game at all. It just anything, it just removes a headache from the game.
Sure.
Um, but if you're like creating a completely different weapon system, a completely different inventory system, and like that, it's almost like you're playing a different game where it's just a remake altogether. Especially like with the graphics. So I guess you need to keep the identity somewhat intact for the veterans coming back.
Yeah.
Uh, so you don't want it to make it feel too different. So I
Yeah.
definitely agree on that point.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it has to remain somewhat recognizable, and to go through and basically remake the game, you would start running into problems with, well, is this going to be able to be in the collection now for $60? Now that we we just spent so much time remaking Mass Effect 1, it's just they optimized it. What's that?
That is true. It's like I almost feel like they could have made Mass Effect One a standalone HD remastering, charge 60 for it. This is oddly pro consumer VA, unless it actually turns out the legendary edition, you buy it and the base game's Mass Effect 1, and then 2 and 3 are DLCs you have to buy for $60 each.
That's the thing. We have not gotten the price point on this yet, and I'm just waiting for some kind of news that's going to like turn this from sounding very positive to something very negative. One of which being they've put like microtransactions or something into it, or something else to try to make this like a games as a service model. And I'm going to be very pissed off if you're this close to just releasing something great.
Oh,
And
there'll
you,
be something controversial, without a doubt. If it even if it's like the PC version is bad, or like it runs like crap on PS4, similar to what Cyberpunk just
oh
dealt with,
man,
or
if they
you know,
can't make this game run well on a PS4, they are going to be in for some YouTube hate. Yeah,
so hopefully they just nail it out of the park. But everything sounds good so far.
yeah.
Like my complaints are really minimal for this edition. They're giving you three really big games in
Hmm.
one package, and I assume it's going to be $60 or so for it.
Yeah. Yeah,
Like
we're assuming on that. We don't know for sure, but that's probably 60, right? I would
I
assume maybe 70, maybe. I don't know. Because that's a thing now with like the PS5 and Xbox Series X is $70. But even that would be a pretty good deal, because if you think about it, Tales of Vesperia, that came out remastered. How much was that? Like $40? Nino Cooney remastered.
$40. Was it? Yeah, I think maybe it was.
Yeah, I mean, Nino Cooney was remastered. That was, I think, similar amount on Switch. So and PS4. So it's just usually these remasters, they give you charge you an arm and a leg. So this is really quite good to get all three of these games for this price point. There was.
Marketing thing too, with them making a whole new Mass Effect right now.
Mhm.
I think getting this game out to as many people as possible may get them hyped up to buy the new Mass Effect.
That's what I was thinking. But like with it coming out in May, you would think you would want to do this like a year out from that other game coming out. But I feel like a new Mass Effect's probably not coming for a long time unless they've been secretly working on it for the past couple of years. But I thought they've been busy with Anthem and who knows.
Well, Bioware has a couple different departments. They have an A team, a B team.
Hmm.
They have a 30-person team for trying to revive Anthem, which they are currently in review with EA right now. Like they're showing their concepts off and seeing if Anthem is worth keeping up or just killing it off. Um, they have in Texas a team dedicated to keeping up the Old Republic. and making content for that game. And their A and B team are just like making different games. Like one team's making Dragon Age, one team is making Mass Effect,
Right.
one team making like Anthem at the time. So I think there's two separate teams going at these games right now.
Yeah, I just thought that that was their marketing line, anyways. After Mass Effect Andromeda came out and it flopped royally, I remember a BioWare executives, I can't remember who, but they said that, okay, well, we're going to take a break from Mass Effect for a while, and Anthem's going to be the next big thing. And they put all their eggs into the basket for Anthem, and then that came out and was basically crashing people's consoles to the point where they couldn't even, they had to buy a new PS4, and they were like, well, reverse turn on that. So I don't know. It's been a wild ride for them. I think maybe they just wanted some goodwill at this point, because their last two big games have just gotten completely trashed when they came out, Andromeda and Anthem. So I don't know.
Yeah, I think these last two games are their it's their, if they fail, like I think BioWare's gone.
Dude, if they can't even do a remaster, if they fly, if they check that up, it'll be zero credibility. Zero. But
Yeah, and most of the people we like from BioWare have left and made their own studio.
yeah. So this is like new people too. Yeah. Basically.
So we'll
The,
see.
yeah.
Both Dragon Age 4, we haven't seen gameplay Dragon Age 4, but the trailer they showed has at least an interesting setup going on. Like I like the color scheme they're using and the kind of world it looks like it is. And then they didn't really show much of the new Mass Effect. They kind of just showed that like this is like the Mass Effect you remember. We're going back to the galaxy. You remember this isn't Andromeda. We're going back to the Normandy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. There were some things that people were a little disappointed about, though, that they did come out front and say, and it was, the Legendary Edition, it's having all the DLC in the game except two pieces of DLC, and the first one was it's not going to include the Pinnacle Station DLC, and that was because like this didn't even come out on the PlayStation 3, and it was for the same exact reason. It was because the source code for the DLC was corrupted when they were trying to port it to the PS3, and apparently that was it. They didn't have another copy of it, so they weren't going to remake this DLC just for this. They just said, okay, that DLC is not going to be on here, which I think is fine because it wasn't on the PS3 version. From what I read online, it wasn't even that great. It was mostly gameplay oriented. So
I don't even remember it.
there you go.
I mean, I don't even know if it's worth getting upset over.
You can watch it on YouTube. So if that's what if you want to do,
Yeah,
it's
I
got like,
don't think it's a big deal, and they were transparent about it too. It's like, hey, look, it's gone. We would put it in here if we could, but every DLC that we could get on here, we did put on here. So I appreciate that. At least they're not gating DLC. They've already promised in the promotional material that all DLC from these games will be in it.
right.
And that's great in itself because EA could easily just hold that DLC off and resell it.
That would be hilarious. That would be hilarious. But I would, yeah. Well, they could have they could still do it. They could still give us like a base version of the remaster, and then if you want to get the legendary version, it's like $100.
I think if this DLC was so important to the game or like story wise or whatnot, I think they probably would have taken time to revive it.
Yeah.
But if it really isn't that important to the story, then I say, really, who cares about it?
Yeah, and that seems to be most of the attitude surrounding it, except a few outliers. The bigger one that's going to be missing is the Mass Effect 3's multiplayer modes. They are not bringing that back for the remaster. And the developer basically said that they originally planned on doing it and they were talking about it and it was on the table to do it. But when it came down to planning for it, they realized in order to implement that, back into the remaster, it was going to take equal amounts of effort and resources as it took to master Mass Effect 1 and make all those changes. And they just decided, you know what? We want to do all these other things with the remaster, and if we were to do that, we would have to scale other things back. And so we're just going to not put the multiplayer mode in there. And
I forgot that the series had a multiplayer mode.
I think that's fine. Like I'm not I don't know. I know that a lot of people, there was a certain amount of people that really enjoyed the multiplayer mode. A lot of them, that was kind of like their first multiplayer experience, I guess. And so they're nostalgic about it. And honestly, I think that it might come back as DLC. You know, that might be their end game goal here. Oh, we're going to put all this effort into these games and then sell the multiplayer version as like a free to play thing, like a year from now, and have monetized stuff in it.
I don't think the multiplayer is going to be a deal breaker for most people. I mean, this game isn't exactly Halo, where like most of the fun comes from the multiplayer.
Yeah.
It's most people play the game for the single player campaign.
Right.
Most people don't buy Mass Effect and rush through the story and get to the multiplayer and whatnot. I mean, that's just not what people buy that game for. And I really haven't heard anyone really be upset about it. Like, not even places where you usually expect people to be upset about it. And they gave a pretty good reason why it shouldn't be in there. And on top of that, you would be managing online servers for Mass Effect 1, 2, and 3 multiplayer. I forgot if one had multiplayer or not, but you would have to be managing all three of those. And I mean, the resources taken into it, especially as an HD remaster, and I don't think people would be playing the multiplayer for very long. I think they may get some enjoyment out of it, and then they just go right back to, I don't know, Fortnite.
Yeah. And I understand. Well, and again, we keep talking about this like it's going to be $60. We're assuming it's going to be $60. And that's just such a phenomenal deal that I'm okay, like you said, with that not being in there. And like you brought up too, it's freaking, and some, it might be like between 8 and 13 years old if they didn't update the gameplay in it. So it's probably not even as fun as you remember, to be honest, if you did play it. And so, yeah, I'm fine with it. I'm cool with it. It is what it is.
I've never seen people when they try to sell Mass Effect to you that it has amazing multiplayer. It's always it has a great story and the combat is fun.
Yeah, I don't play multiplayer in games where it's like a side thing. Like I never played The Last of Us multiplayer. I never got invested in that. Like it's just not if that's not why you're if that's not a main element of the game, then I don't want to I'm not going to play that.
Yeah, those things are usually put in just trying to get as much longevity out of the game as they possibly can and try to make it as much money as they can from a game they just put a lot of money and resources into.
Mm,
And those multiplayers die out pretty quick, um, especially when the new game uh, pretty soon comes out. Uh, I side with them. It would be cool if the multiplayer was there. Of course, more is always better in this type of scenario. But I don't know. I
yep.
mean,
But that's just like a whole nother, I agree with you, but that's just a whole nother thing that could go wrong too at launch. That the remaster might be great, but then the multiplayer's jacked up, and then you have 80,000 YouTube videos of unable to connect, or like, you know, bad physics or something like that, or, you know, or the server goes down the first day, and it's just detracting from the remaster.
yeah, this game's not Halo or GoldenEye. It's people are not going to get together in a party night and play Mass Effect multiplayer. I mean, maybe some, but it's not going to be a widely regarded thing.
Yeah, for sure. I did see something from GameSpot where they were talking about that, like they got a hands-on impressions. Well, not hands-on. They got to see somebody from BioWare play it for a certain amount of time. And then they were talking about it, and what they said was that, you know, they said it was really impressive. There are a lot of great upgrades. It looks great from what they saw, but they're worried that some gamers have gotten used to like the Resident Evil 2 remake type kind of re-release, a level of quality, and like the 7 remake and stuff like that, in that, this is just a remaster with some upgrades. So if you've played it on PC heavily modded, it's going to be a similar experience. And that this is really cool that they're doing this. And the price wise, it's a pretty good thing to pick up, most likely. But they brought up that some people might be disappointed with it, given the level of effort other games have put into basically remaking a new game, and
But here's the thing, though. I would even argue that the Mass Effect series isn't that old that they need full on remakes. Like, the only game you can kind of argue with that is Mass Effect 1. And even then, like, the presentation of the story and the voice acting and all that stuff, it's like, it's still pretty top notch. And it just needs an upgrade. It doesn't need a remake. Final Fantasy VII and Resident Evil 2 are just like games from a completely different era that like they're like trying to appeal them to a modern audience is a very uphill battle. So the only real choice to bring these games back to a modern audience was to fully remake them.
yeah,
And in that context, it's a really good choice because I mean we got the same kind of thrill and scares that we got from Resident Evil 2 back then that we did today because they did those
it's really
modern
good.
changes. But Mass Effect still gives those uh, it still gives that proper presentation. You don't need to remake that yet. We're not at that point, I think, and that's what I've been kind of arguing about with them. It's still in rumor level, but still rumor that they're remaking Resident Evil 4.
Yeah, I saw that.
And
Yeah.
that's a game that still holds up well enough as it is right now that you don't need to remake that.
Yeah, if you're going to remake something, it should surpass the original in every way, right?
Yeah, I mean that's something a lot of I tell myself also is that is there something wrong with the original product? Not wrong in that it's a bad game or anything. It was definitely a good game at its time. It's like are these features are going if we HD remaster it, will the modern audience love it or will they not like it? Will they force themselves to use these tank like controls or would they rather have this game presented to them in a different light?
Yeah.
So that's stuff you have to ask yourself. Is there a problem with the original product that it wouldn't appeal to modern? That's kind of where you need to go when you ask yourself if you should remaster or remake. And then Mass Effects, uh, in terms of Mass Effect, it's not at that point. Remastering it does more than enough justice to get people back into the series.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, it's like you said, it's aged, but it's not aged that much. The enhancements make it more modern feeling. They've added a lot of quality of life enhancements, and that's enough to close the gap, because it was already, yeah, Mass Effect 1 is about 13 years old, but it was also very cutting edge when it launched. So I think that it was kind of in the upper echelon of games that came out then. So it's not your standard 2007 game. It was much ahead of its time. And so I think that, with these enhancements, with these upgrades, that's much safer. And honestly, that's what I would prefer. I'd be really disappointed if they're just remaking these games, because I don't have faith in BioWare. And then also, I like, why not remake the originals? Or at least re-release those and let me play those. They, at least Square did that with Final Fantasy VII. We got Final Fantasy VII on the PS4, and then we got the 7 remake, right? So
Here's the thing too: if you remake one, wouldn't you have to remake two and three?
yeah, that would be a huge investment. What if 1 was just trash like Andromeda, you know? And you're like, oh crap, we got to do this for 2 more games. It might sink the company. Yeah, for sure.
Fine as is. I mean, I complained about Mass Effect 1's graphics earlier, but like Hat said, all it needed was an AI upscaling and just redo some of the models, and you're square.
Yeah, you're good. They've also, real quick, I forgot to bring up some of the requirements to get the best ending. They've lowered some of the morality checks and stuff like that so that it's a little bit easier for you to get it. And if you just want to play Mass Effect 3 and not play 1 and 2, you can get the best ending, but you have to do literally everything. Whereas before, you couldn't do it if you only played Mass Effect 3. So they've even made some of the narratives a little bit easier for you to get. You wouldn't have to be so pulling your hair out to try to get some of these good sequences. So that's cool.
I remember another thing people were demanding. I mean, they quickly went away, but people were demanding again after we dealt with this years ago to change the ending of Mass Effect 3,
Yeah. They
especially after they put the Citadel content in. And I'm still going to say the same thing I said years ago. You can like how a game ended. You can not like how a game ended. That's fine. It's your opinion. But I don't think you have the right to demand the artist what they should do with that ending.
right,
Like
right,
you can feel kind of like ripped off on it, but that's just like how the product is. Now, I would say if like the game just like abruptly ended and you didn't actually get like an ending to the game, I think I would be more on board. But even if it wasn't, I mean, I agree it was a crappy ending, but I've seen so many crappy endings in movies and games in my time, but never in my head have I ever gone. I need to write a letter to these people, or I need to start a Twitter mob and demand they change it to the way I like it. And on top of that, it would feel so artificial
right.
if they change it like that. And the Citadel DLC is a compromise on that, but I really wish they didn't cave in. I think I would have just preferred to just say, well, the ending sucked.
And
Like,
that's it.
it's great, ending sucks.
Yeah, if you just didn't like the ending, it wasn't something you preferred. That's one thing, and to demand a change to that is a little bit weird, but it's a totally different story when it's just a literally missing content, right? With Final Fantasy 15, we talked about this where, there was just huge chunks of the story that were just missing at launch. And I think I would have been a little, I don't know if I would have been writing in, but I would have been a little peeved if they had not put some of that stuff in there. But
Yeah,
anyways,
and then when we talked about Final Fantasy 15, I mean, maybe someone can find a video of me saying otherwise. I mean, with the internet, you guys are are pretty good at that. But I never felt like Final Fantasy 15 had to change its ending. I spoke a lot in hindsight of what would have been better or what they should have done and what would have been more satisfying.
right.
But I mean, I wasn't writing a letter to Tabata and being like, "This is outrageous. You must change this ending,
Well, and
or
I
you
think
must change this story. You must remake this game."
what's crazy is that that's what they ended up doing, right? They had the Ignis DLC that gave you a different ending, and then they just released a book that has a completely different story. So they've given fans lots of different options, but we were not demanding that. So uh,
We just complained.
we just yeah we just complained about it endlessly. But anyways, so to wrap things up with the Legendary Edition for Mass Effect, I'm a little disappointed they didn't announce a Switch version just because I think that would have been cool to be able to play Mass Effect on the Switch. Although I realize, I don't know, with these enhancements, well, I guess they could have still, I still think they could have got it on the Switch, to be honest, because we got Witcher 3 on the Switch. That's always my go to. So I'm a little disappointed it's not on the Switch. It's only on console and PC. However, they probably were smart in not having to try to take that on also with trying to get it to, run well on console and PC to also have to worry about porting it down to the Switch and worrying about it playing in handheld mode and in docked mode. It's probably just a good thing to at least wait.
I think there might eventually be one. And maybe it might be based off the sales of how these do, but I think they, whenever they port to Nintendo, I think they get a completely different company to do it. They let some third party handle it. I think a third party handled Mass Effect 3 on the Wii U, and they added like the gameplay controller or like the gamepad features on it. I think it's possible, but I don't know how Unreal Engine 3 would work on Switch. I think that might be a problem. I don't know. Maybe you know better than me on that, but I think doesn't the Switch have an issue with Unreal Engine 3?
That's a really good point that I didn't even think of. Yeah, well, I don't know. I think that it did at some point, and I don't know if that's been resolved or if that's still a problem. But that is a good point, and that we saw that with other games where like it just didn't have the right version of Unreal, and that was even for Unreal 4, right? People get like Dragon Quest. It was made on an earlier version of Unreal 4, and they had to like port the whole game to like a newer version in order for it to run on the Switch. So yeah, I imagine Unreal 3 is probably just a no-go. I didn't even think of that. So we're probably not getting a Switch version for at least a good amount of time. So that's crazy. I didn't even think of that.
Unless there's some maybe cloud service or they bring soon, but who knows about any of that right now.
Yeah, for sure. So anyways, I'm planning on still picking this game up. I'm gonna probably get it on PC. You said you're probably gonna get it on PC at some point as well, right?
Yeah, it's not a day one thing for me. I certainly right now I don't feel like jumping right back into the series. I eventually will want to jump back into the series. I really enjoyed all three games. So I mean, inevitably I will get it, but I'll probably wait for a Steam sale or not. Do I have to use Origin for it?
I don't know. I don't know.
Well,
I'm sure there'll be a sale of some kind.
if there's a sale on some kind on PC, I'll get it. I'm
Yeah.
not about using Origin.
Yeah, if I can play the game. Yeah, it's just, I honestly too, because with it with it being an open world game, even though it is a port and a remaster, I kind of want to just wait and hear some of the reviews to make sure there's not anything crazy going on with it. And so that's why I'm not going to pre-order the physical version, and I'm just going to get it on PC when it comes out. That way it'll just give me an option to read some reviews, and I don't know. I'm sure they'll lift the embargo a week in advance, but that's the problem with some of these people. They're pre-ordering these games before they even have reviews because they want it day one. And I'm just like, if that's the case, just get it digitally. And I think that's what I'm going to do. So,
Mm-hmm. And yeah,
anyways,
I own these games physically already, technically. So
yeah,
uh,
well,
digital.
yeah, for sure. All right, well, let's transition into our next topic here. We have Final Fantasy XIV's expansion Endwalker. There's a lot of really cool stuff with this that we're going to get into. We're going to talk about the trailer and stuff like that. But Eric, you are our resident Final Fantasy XIV expert. So what do we need to know about this expansion?
Well, this expansion is technically the end of a 10-year story that's been told throughout the game since its first counterpart 1.0 in 2010, and it and this particular story is coming to a conclusion, and it's going to answer a lot of questions that people have been wondering for so very long who have been following it. That doesn't mean the Final Fantasy 14 story itself is ending. What it does mean, though, it's going to close a 10-year chapter of this game's story, and they're going to go off into new horizons, new territories for going for expanding upon the world. Like they're going to break away from the Heidelin Zodiac arc and let that in, let all the questions be answered, and then they want to move to a whole new adventure after that, like with different kinds of villains and scenery and whatnot. So that's where it's being with the story. Pretty much, I am personally very excited for it. Like I said, I've been playing the game since 1.0 in 2010, and there's always things that I've been wondering that it's not explained in lore because it's intentionally it's information intentionally being withheld. Um, so I'm always excited to see like the next new thing that happens. It's kind of
Right.
like I don't know if you played through the Metal Gear series or followed it
Hmm.
throughout its years, but it's kind of like the same thing. You're waiting for like the next game to come out, and you want to know what happens next. Like at the end of two, you want to know
Right.
what's up with the Patriots, yeah, and then like the third game does and doesn't tell you at the same time.
Yeah.
But then like Metal Gear Solid 4 was the game that just answered all your questions for you and ended on that note. That's kind of like how I've been following this series because Final Fantasy 14 is not like a traditional Final Fantasy,
Yeah.
not just because of an MMO, but because it's a series style game. It's kind of like you're watching a TV show and you're just going and each expansion is like a new season and in each season ends like on some kind of cliffhanger that makes you like desire to know what happens next. And
Hmm.
it does really good dangling that carrot in front of you, wanting you to run and grab it. And it's been doing that to me horribly these past years. um, well, definitely can't play as much as I used to, but
I think this is the first time ever recorded on YouTube history someone has made a connection to Metal Gear Solid and Final Fantasy 14. So I congratulate you on tracing the dots.
yeah, in terms of anticipation of like wanting to know what
Yeah.
happens next, because the series and the game has such deep and rich lore, like it would take you weeks to read through all the lore and information that this game has in its world. Like there is a YouTube channel that's actually dedicated specifically to going over lore and trying to figure these things out. I think his name is like Ethis.
And
I forgot the
uh,
rest.
for Final Fantasy 14 or
Final Fantasy 14.
yeah.
Like this has more lore than like any Final Fantasy. Like I think most Final Fantasies put together like still don't have as much lore as 14 does. Like the sad thing is, I think I know more about 14 lore than I do our actual world history, which may be a bad thing, but you know that's how it
Right.
is. But yeah, but in the end, this is it's called Endwalker because it is the end of this story, and we'll be going over the trailer, but yes, it is confirmed. If you don't want to be spoiled on anything, it's hard to not be spoiled on this because it's just everywhere. Sorry. We are going to the moon in this final installment of this particular story.
Which is wild.
There have been clues to lead up to it, and everyone's been demanding for years to put us on the moon. And Naoki Yoshida, the game's producer director, has answered that call. And they're already making a lot of allusions to Final Fantasy IV with
Yeah.
it, even so much as making the character representing the CG in the trailers. People call him Derplander, but it's the Warrior of Light.
Yeah.
uh, but like it's a character or the job that represents the expansion, and it's Paladin. And I think it was kind of to contrast the Dark Knight. That was the feature of Shadowbringers, and using Paladin as in for Endwalker. But another reason, obviously, is to reflect Cecil, who is also a Paladin. Um, so there is a lot of FF4 allusions to this game. Um, like even looking at screenshots, there is the moon. There is some allusions to FF9 also. A lot of places kind of look like uh, Terra from
Right.
FF9. If you're familiar with the terrain, some of the artwork looks like it. It's speculation on my end, so don't take that as a fact that they're using that as inspiration. But However, there is one that they're clearly using inspiration from. There is a new raid coming out in the game, and
Pan.
it's called Pandemonium,
Yep.
and it does have direct ties to things we know about in FF2 and FF9. Even the character that is centered in it, La Habrea, who was a main villain in previous expansions, um, is the center of it, and his actual name or title to him as an Asian is Mateus, which is reflecting of Emperor Mateus
Mm,
from FF2.
yeah.
So so like I said, there's a lot of illusions and uh,
Just
reference
tie-ins. Yeah.
and everything that don't harm the FF14 story by any means. It's kind of like FF9 where they had a lot of references to things, but it doesn't necessarily hurt it. Now, I'm not saying it doesn't entirely do that because there is a literal crossover with Near Automata right now, a 24-man raid. They somehow made Near work in FF14's universe, and it doesn't completely mesh well together. So yes, there are times where it doesn't completely work out well, despite being executed well, but they do a pretty good job still trying to keep it their own thing, even when they use elements from other Final Fantasies, because there is a level of fan service to this game to draw and hook people in. It's just inevitable that you have to uh, do a couple things like that to get people in and keep their interest for it. I'm kind of looking through what the other stuff they have.
I saw a 2021 release date, and it's going to be on PS5, in
Yes,
addition
and
to PS4 and PC. But
yeah, and here's the great thing about PS5. If you own the PS4 version already, your PS5 upgrade is 100% free. You don't even need to register anything. It will your PS4 account will just count as a PS4 5 hybrid, and you will get all the PS5 features when you when you download it on the PS5. You'll get the solid state drive features. You will get the higher frame rate. You will get the much better graphics, everything with it. So no money comes out of your end as long as you can get a PS5, which is the actual hard part. Then you will be good. Um, the other things here is yes, there is a new job coming out for it. Finally, we are getting a new healer. We kind of went 2 expansions without getting a healer. There was a lot of demand for one in Shadowbringers, but uh, they didn't have one in because they were still having a hard time balancing the current healers they had. But they kind of found a workaround and decided to bring in a new job called, you may be familiar with, Sage. Now, it is called a Sage, but it does not do anything that a Sage does that you remember in previous Final Fantasies. It does more things like you remember in a Gundam anime. Um, and I guess we can show, there's a gameplay footage for that. I'll show you later if you want to put it up here. But
sure.
essentially, the job has 4 mechanical uh, things behind their back. And when you do something, they come up and they do whatever feature. Rather, they can shoot lasers from their front. They can create barriers around people. Like it's a very technological job that focuses on putting barriers around people and healing them also. So it's very interesting. We definitely did not see it coming. A lot of people are speculating like Chemist
Hmm.
or something like that, especially since Chemist was referenced in Shadowbringers heavily.
Right.
But we got bamboozled again, and Sage came out, which will teach people a lesson. The Naoki Yoshida and his crew will make whatever the hell they want, and we will never know truly what they are making.
But you will enjoy it.
Yeah. Having said that, they are also going to release a new melee job,
Hmm.
but they have not yet announced it. The only clue we have is a Grim Reaper T-shirt that Naoki Yoshida wore on the presentation. He always wears T-shirts to give a hint. Like for Red Mage, he wore a Scarlet Witch T-shirt that had a
Okay.
lot of to it, red and sparkling to it.
So this one
And
was a Reaper.
this one was a Grim Reaper. So a lot of people are speculating right now is that it may be a battle scythe type job, which is mostly what we're going off right now. People are thinking that it might be a necromancer type job, but it's like more melee than
That'd be
magic.
cool. That'd be pretty cool.
That's what I think it might be. But again, when we think it's going to be something, it's going to be something completely different. So I only take that as a wild speculation, and it might be something different. But I do think it could be battle scythe related, especially since it's been so highly demanded. I also thought people demanded gun blades for years, and I thought to myself, I don't know if you could really make that into a job. And lo and behold, I was wrong. They made the gunbreaker job, and it's a gunblade user in their tanks. And they
Well,
use a lot of Squall and Cypher's references to Squall and Cypher's abilities in Final Fantasy VIII.
very
So
cool.
it's a very cool job, and it's actually my main job now because I really love the way it plays,
Yeah. Very
and the
cool.
weapons are really cool looking. But yeah, that is what they're doing on the jobs. Of course, the cap's going to be raised from level 80 to 90. They did say that they are crunching the numbers to the game because if you've played the game like World of Warcraft, you know that occasionally, every once in a while, they have to crunch their numbers down because the numbers have gotten too big. Like HP numbers have gotten really big. The amount of damage you're doing is just like a ridiculous number to keep up with.
Right.
So there is a data cap that these developers have, and every time they reach that cap, they have to crunch the numbers back down. So that's something that's going to happen in the next expansion also. So it's so
So
like right
what?
now I have like 150,000 HP.
Right.
The next expansion comes, I'll have like maybe like 50,000 HP, but it's still going to equate
The
to
same.
if
Yeah.
I had the same. So there isn't too big of a difference on that. But they will show that level 80 to 90 will have the most significant raise in stats.
I bet that freaks a lot of players out though that don't know that. When they log in, they're like, "What the hell? What the hell? I've got
Yeah,
a third of my HP. What happened?"
but I mean, I played World of Warcraft also, so I think to myself, this is pretty standard. They eventually got to do it,
Yeah.
and it's good to do. In terms of new areas, we are finally the people we've been going against ever since 1.0, the Garlemald Empire. The big thing that people have always said is, we want to go to Garlemald. We want to go here. We want to finally take the fight to them, and we are. We're finally going to Garlemald in this expansion. Um, if you play through the story, it's not going to be exactly what you think it is that we're when we get there. I'm going to try to not spoil it, but it's not exactly we're going to finally take down the empire going there. It's we are going there, but it is for different reasons.
Very cool.
And let's just say the empire at this point in the story are not 100% in their prime. uh, but yes, we are finally going there. They've shown it as an area that we are going in and walking around. Another place that we've never been to, but has been mentioned plenty of times in the lore, as Thavnair. And this place it's got a weird mixture of a lot of things. It's got a mixture of Brazilian style, Indian style, um, land, terrain, buildings, like culture, like um, it's got a bunch of crazy things going on with it, and it looks really cool. It's where the dancer job originates in the lore and stuff like that. So I am interested in in exploring the town and seeing where a lot of the stuff comes from. Uh, there
Very
is a
cool.
new tribe coming in. It's like elephant people, blue
Oh,
elephant people. If you see them, they look like that blue elephant from Return of the Jedi playing the piano. Like they look exactly like that. So if you're
yeah.
wondering what they look like without looking at the screenshot yet, that's it. We don't know too much what's going on with them. We do know that they were, I believe, once slaves to Garlemald.
Hmm.
And I think their beast tribe escaped. I could be wrong, though. I'd have to double check that. Um, Now, there are new trial fights coming out. Like in previous expansions, we've gotten things like Ifrit, Shiva, Titan, um, what um, what are other ones like Lakshmi? We've gone down the list of famous primals uh, over the course of Final Fantasy. If you name one, there is a chance that we have fought it in some way, shape, or form in the game. And this one is not going to disappoint, especially if you're a Final Fantasy X fan. They are bringing Anima, as you remember him, into the game. And he will be in the story in some way. He will be,
Interesting.
yes, he will be a trial fight. And they actually got the original designer from Final Fantasy X to come
Yeah.
in and redesign him to fit in 14.
So this was Seymour's summon, right?
Yes, I think it was like his mother
Right.
or something. Yeah. And obviously the story will be different here, but there might be some allusion. We're thinking that might be like an allusion to like Xenos because we don't know his mother. So it might dive more into that. But yes, he will be in the game. We did see that there are hints of the Magus sisters
Huh.
making an appearance also in some way. We
Very
found
cool.
symbols that represent them, like in artwork and such, and which would make sense because there's going to be a lot of allusions to FF4. So having the Magus sisters in there would make sense also. If there'll be a boss fight or a major trial fight, I don't know. But we have to wait and see on that. So that's going to be another cool one coming. Um, the other thing is we do have a new alliance raid coming out for it. And this time it won't be a crossover. The 24 mans have been pretty famous for being a crossover. A Realm Reborn, we went up the Crystal Tower from FF3, but they still like originated to uh, and then to fit more into 14. Um, Heaven's Wards was original though with Mac, and then Stormblood did the crossover with Ivalice and
Okay.
all the Final Fantasy tactics and FF12 stuff like crossover, and they did another crossover with them again with Blades of Gunhilder.
Very cool.
That's a early quest right now in Shadowbringers, and of course we got Nier Automata for the Shadowbringers one, but they said this one is going to be 100% original. And I mean, at least in terms of FF14, it's going to be original. It's not going to be a crossover, and it's actually going to answer a lot of deep lore questions.
Okay.
So a lot of people are speculating that's going to be Silver Tier Lake, which is if anyone remembers 1.0 or actually played it, there is a CG with a big battle against Garlemald 15 years prior to the game starting, where they fought Midgardsormr, and during that fight, there was a unknown primal that took down both the Garlemald ship and Midgardsormr, and but we never knew what that was, and we're speculating that this new 24 man alliance may answer may explore more of what happened in that time 15 years ago. So, not saying that's what it is, but we're heavily speculating because They said this has been a lore question we've been asking for years, so that's what we think it may turn out to be. Another thing is they're going to do a smaller scale PvP modes. PvP is not exactly the most popular feature of the game, but it does have its audience, even if it's a niche one. And they're trying to find more ways to get casual players into the game. Like they're going to remove roles because the thing I noticed about the PvP in that game is if you have a good healer, that's mostly what you need to win the fights. It's just making sure you have the better healer, and it's just mostly mowing down the other group from there.
Yeah.
Of course, there's more strategy in that, but that's really what I feel like it boils down to compared to other PvP games. So I wouldn't say I wouldn't play 14 for the PvP. That's kind of like a side attraction if you want to play more. Um, but there is that. There are other smaller features coming in, like they're doing a. It's weird. They're doing like a farm bill type thing where you have like this tiny little island that like you raise up minions and you garden this plot of land on the island. And I guess it's there's some probably some crafting benefits from it. So Farm Bill, I think, is coming to 14
Huh.
as a thing. But that's I think there might be some information I missed, but that really is the big gist of
Seems like
uh,
there's a lot of cool stuff coming for this to get
yeah,
excited about. So, and
yeah.
and for newer players, if they wanted to, they just streamlined the first game, right? So now it's not going to take as much time to be able to get to the better parts of Final Fantasy 14.
It's better. Now I will say this: A Realm Reborn is a perfectly good B-rated story to go through. The downside to it is there is a lot of menial tasks that are asked of you to go through in the game, and some people have been able to endure that, and some people have enjoyed it for sure. But there's a lot of people who don't feel like it's worth going through to get to Heaven's Ward. I still heavily encourage anyone who is not enjoying that aspect of the game to keep giving it a chance and get into Heaven's Ward. Heaven's Ward is where they found to streamline the story that makes it feel more like a traditional Final Fantasy experience. You're still going to get some MMO elements there, but they did a really good job on making it like a single player Final Fantasy game with MMO elements more than an MMO with Final Fantasy elements. And Heaven's Ward is where it truly shines. Because the context is when they rebuilt the game, they did have a very rushed schedule, so
Right.
they had a story laid out, but they likely put like some menial stuff in it to make the process feel long enough to get to 50, feel worthwhile, and not like you're immediately getting there. Which is just my guess with it. But like I said, A Realm Reborn is still a perfectly good story, still better than things you'll get from like other modern Final Fantasies that we've talked about in the past. But Heaven's Ward though is just A plus story content. And this is where people get absolutely hooked. And the best thing about it is um, Square Enix knows this. They know Heaven's Ward is what gets their grip on people in this game. So what they did was they increased the free trial, which was originally level 35, and they increased it to level 60, and they give you the base game and the Heaven's Ward expansion for free, all the way to the very end of Heaven's Ward story and beginning of Stormblood is where it stops. So you basically get two Final Fantasy games for free, like no money out of your pocket. The only
Oh
thing that's
wow.
wasted is your time if you didn't enjoy it. But goddamn, Heaven's Ward is so good, and the story just keeps getting better from there. And Shadowbringers is just like it's like it's just too damn good.
Yeah.
in my opinion. You grow with these characters and you really care about everything that happens in the world at this point.
Mm,
Um, you're not just simply a spectator throughout the series. Like you are the main character. Things are centered around you and everything like that. And it shows in this game. Like you feel powerful going through it. And like I said with the Metal Gear comparison, there's always some kind of cliffhanger that just makes you yearn for more. And I don't mean that in a way for people to get addicted. It's not a game where you have to put 20 or put several hours a night in. You can put an hour in, you can put 5 hours in, you'll make progress in some way.
yeah. Yeah.
And it is a very long series at this point. You're basically playing one, two, three, four. When Endwalker comes out, 5 Final Fantasy games to finish off this 10-year story.
Would you say each one's about 100 hours or?
The main story, each one's about, uh, if we include the post content that leads to the next one, I would probably say there's about 70 hours
Okay. So
per one.
that's fairly reasonable. I mean, it's like basically a open world game, right? Just play 5 of them.
Yeah. And the game's always on sale. Like, even if you're playing the free trial and you like it, don't buy it quite yet. The game, like half the time, is on sale, 50% off for $30 for everything. Endwalker is not even available for pre-order yet, so but you can get every game right now. I think it's on sale right now. Maybe not when this podcast uploads. You'll just need to check it frequently, but it's usually $30 for everything.
Well, I was going to say when Endwalker eventually, when we get closer to its release date, which is coming, I believe, in May, that should, I would imagine April, we should start seeing big sales because they're going to want to get people who are excited to experience it that maybe, they haven't even tried Final Fantasy 14, but there's all this talk about it. They'll be able to get in cheap, right?
Yeah.
So maybe not the Endwalker portion will be on sale, but the rest of it.
Oh yeah, it'll probably definitely be on sale.
Yeah.
The previous games, but Endwalker will be $40-$50. I forgot how much Shadowbringers was. I think it was $40 for each expansion that came out. But yeah, the whole set's usually like $30. So play through it. And another thing I say is, don't worry if you're. I'm speaking to Final Fantasy fans in particular. Don't worry so much about trying to get the end game. What you really need to prioritize is enjoying the story, because that is really mostly what the game's about. There are subset of people that only care about the rating in the game, which is the rating is very fun in the game. Unfortunately, I had to quit because I don't have time for it anymore. But I still enjoy playing the casual content. But just focus on enjoying the game like you would any other Final Fantasy, and and it's just free flowing from there.
Yeah.
And you'll just enjoy yourself. Community's friendly enough. Might get a bad egg once in a while, but I guess that's enough of me trying to advertise it. Square Enix, believe it or not, does not pay me to do this.
Yeah.
I wish they did.
If they did, you would see quite the spectacle.
But a lot of times I speak, like, especially on Discord, people are like, "Oh no, he's going to talk about 14 again." So I try to keep it to a minimum, but sometimes I can't help myself.
Well, it's an exciting time. You got a new expansion coming out, and there's a lot there to be excited about. And we do have listeners that also enjoy Final Fantasy 14, so I'm sure this was a big treat for them.
Yeah. Oh, I will say one more thing.
Sure.
They are planning on letting you jump between servers. They already let you do it within a data center. With a specific data center, like you can jump between primal data centers, but now they'll let you jump to any server in the game. Like your character will not be officially registered to that server, But like, say you have a friend that plays on Gilgamesh, and you're on Hyperion, you can play with that person from Gilgamesh uh, in instance content. Now we don't know if they'll let you join them in open world content. Right now, within specific data centers, they let you play open world with other people. But we're thinking they might only let you do instance because they said there's going to be more limitations to jumping between regional servers and such. So I'm thinking maybe instance, but I mean that's pretty great though. You can play with anyone despite what server they're on. So uh, so if you happen to be like on the server that and you meet someone you like, but you don't want to pay $18 to officially transfer over, you can be like, oh well, we can still play instance content together. Just can't see each other in the open world or something.
Yeah. So very, very cool. Seems like they're really trying to bring the community together. And with this expansion, like I said, a lot of very cool stuff to be excited about, and great time to get into the series because now it's been worked on for so long and there's so much content to play. You don't have to wait around for the next expansion because it's right around the corner. So very, very cool stuff.
Absolute best time to play. The expansion's not coming out till fall. So if you start like say today, you have months to complete the game before Endwalker comes out.
Yeah. Did I say I was saying May earlier, but yeah, fall 2021 is the release window for now. So we'll have to see. Speaking of Final Fantasy 14 though, our media partner RPGFan.com, they have lots of other podcasts on their website in addition to ours. And one of them, Retro Encounter, their most recent episode is on Final Fantasy 14 Part 1, A Realm Reborn. So if you've enjoyed this, you can go check that out. It's a 96 minutes of discussion on A Realm Reborn. So very, very cool.
And they didn't invite me with the audacity.
Well, yeah, well, maybe this is part 1, so maybe you can get them part 2 or something. But we'll have to see, bring it up. But also Random Encounter is also another podcast on their website, rpgfan.com. Random Encounter does kind of more news and just general off the cuff discussion. And in their most recent episode, they did Game of the Year 2020. And I believe this was part 1 of the podcast. So me and Eric were actually on part 2. We recorded that a while ago. So that should be coming out shortly, I would imagine, or soon. But that was a fun discussion. But I believe part 1, Game of the Year 2020, centered a lot around Final Fantasy VII Remake. It was kind of funny when me and Eric got on part 2. Greg was just like, okay, Pat and Eric, we talked about 7 Remake in part 1. That took up 85% of the podcast. So we're going to try to not do that this episode. And me
I
and
think
Eric,
it's taking so long because he needs to take all the time to edit me out.
yeah, we still ended up talking about it for like a decent amount of time, but not we were careful. But
I don't know. I don't know if he's gonna put it in there, but I spoke like 5 minutes about a completely wrong game they brought up.
yeah, they were very nice about it.
They're nice about it. They're listening. They didn't stop me or anything. I was like, well, they're very nice, but should have stopped me like the first 10 seconds. They're like, wait, this doesn't sound right. I think I was like talking about like Hyrule Warriors, the new one. They were talking about the Rhythm Zelda game, like Cadence of Hyrule, and I mixed the two up, and I just went on a rant about Hyrule Warriors. It was great.
I think somebody on the call had like reviewed the game too. And they're like, man, I really missed something in that game. But
Yeah,
it's pretty funny.
but it was a good time. I enjoyed talking to him.
Yep. They also have a Rhythm Encounter, which is a podcast that does, game soundtrack reviews. They'll talk about specific topics. For example, they had a female game composer episode where they went through notable female composers. Sometimes they'll focus on a particular composer. Other times they'll do a particular game and talk about the soundtrack. So very, very cool. Definitely go check that out. And they also, in addition to their website where it has news and written reviews going all the way back to the late 90s, they also have a YouTube page they're starting to push more where they're doing video reviews. So video reviews of the written reviews. Not all the written reviews are getting video reviews because it takes a lot of effort to have somebody record the footage while somebody else can write the review, and then somebody has to edit it and all that other stuff. But they're doing that pretty routinely. They just had a review out for Persona 5 Strikers, and they gave it a really good score of a 9 out of 10. And a lot of people really liked the review. A couple people said, hey, I wasn't going to pick up this game, but now I saw this review and now I want to go pick the game up. So definitely go check out their review for that. Same thing on YouTube. Just type in RPG fan and it'll come right up. But other than that, I think that's all we got for this week. We will have another podcast for you all next week. We apologize. We were got a little disjointed there for a while. We were kind of busy last week, and I think the podcast before that didn't come out till like almost the weekend. So we were kind of outside our normal operations, but we've adjusted some things and we're going to be getting back in the groove here. So we'll have a podcast out next week and look forward to that. Other than that, thank you guys, and we will see you all next week. Take it easy.
Take care.